Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So for this video, I want to cover retrofitting in general. If you're looking at buying a set of retrofit headlights, a lot of times it's hard to know where to start, what to look for. And I want to try to cover some different things to help those that are looking for a retrofitter or looking for a set of retrofit lights. I want to try to set expectations to where realistically where they should be, but also to kind of guide you in what to look for. There are good builders, there are bad builders, and there are builders in between. And you know, sometimes the most difficult part is figuring out who is what and where, and that can be pretty difficult. So I'm going to do what I can to try to help guide you to try to find the right builders. Now we do have a list of builders on our website at nextlevelneo.com. If you click in the top and you do the authorized dealers list, those are builders who have at least made the steps to use better quality products. Now everybody on that list, that does not necessarily mean they use exclusively our products, but they do purchase our products enough that they were able to get on the list. Which is a good sign to begin with. There are some very big builders that I know for a fact are still using really cheap parts, and I'll cover some of those here in this video. And at no point have made any attempt to better those parts. And I know this because I get people with their lights that contact me. I've had some of their lights in and I've seen them. I'm not going to name any names. I'm not here to do that. But you definitely have to be careful. And it's not even as simple as you get what you pay for. You know, that's an easy one to throw out there. But there are people charging top dollar for garbage, unfortunately. And there are people I know on our list personally who are cheap and use good stuff. So it's difficult to try to level all that out and figure out who's good and who's not. Price alone does not dictate that. Backlog is a pretty good sign, but we'll cover some of the things to look for, some of the questions to ask, and try to help you to understand what it is that you're looking for when you hear these names and keywords. Try to help you to understand what it all actually means. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and show you a basic harness. Now this is the harness that we use, and everybody's a little bit different. I have videos going over how to make the harnesses like this, but you know, it can vary from shop to shop. I'm sure there's places that actually have nicer layouts than this, and I know for a fact there are many places that have rat's nests that they will send you. So how clean the harness is should be something that you factor in. Maybe ask, you know, how many plugs are there, how much is there involved. A common question I keep getting asked from people is it plug and play? Well, the short answer is no. None of this stuff is going to be plug and play. It can't be. It's impossible. You can't make an addressable build that's plug and play. Now, I mean, you could make a switchback if you're going for a switchback style, which the differences between those I'll go into a little more detail, but basically it's just the technology that's within the lights. If you're looking for the color flow style with the RGB and the stuff that flows around, it's not going to be plug and play. But it doesn't mean that it has to be, you know, a rocket scientist needs to install it for you. It can be simple enough that you can install it yourself, even though it's not plug and play. So the real question should be is how are your harnesses laid out? Do you have multiple plugs? Do you have waterproof plugs? Many builders do not use waterproof plugs. And that's something that you should factor in the event that you're going to buy a set of lights. I personally would much rather go with a builder that's using the waterproof plugs. They're easy enough to get a hold of. It's not a heck of a lot more money to upgrade to a waterproof plug. And the standard JST plugs are the industry standard basically for most everything. Profile products are all JST. Most color flow, even a lot of the stuff that we sell is JST. It is up to the builder to decide if they want to switch those plugs to something different. Unfortunately, it is the industry standard, so most people have stuck with it, but as a professional builder, you're assembling everything and shipping the sets of lights, the builder really should be cutting those off and putting waterproof plugs on for you. That doesn't mean that you can't use a standard JST plug and not have issues. Many people do. Dielectric grease works well. A little bit of tape around the plug, things like that are great ways to be able to use a JST without issues. But personally speaking, I feel much more confident with a waterproof plug. And a waterproof plug is going to be something like this. It's basically a barrel connector, has a screw terminal on it. It will plug into the light or a halo or something like that, and that way no water can get in there and cause corrosion or any kind of connectivity issues down the road. Once again, this is not something that absolutely has to be done. It's not guaranteed that you're going to have issues if somebody's not using these, but it makes me feel better as a builder using them because you are going to have less issues. Next up would just be the overall wiring in general. I mean, I have many things within the lights that this controller will control, and all of it is contained within those plugs. As you can see here, this one has your power and ground connection. It's a single power and ground with a fuse terminal here and ring terminals to connect to the battery. So install is kept very simple in that way. Then you've got one plug going off to the battery side headlight and a longer plug that can be run through the car, generally behind the grille to the other side of the car, so it's long enough for that. And this is it. That is just as simple as it is. You got power and ground to the battery, and you've got your two plugs that go to the lights themselves. And other than that, everything is factory plugs. Now, some builds, you do have to have wires that you tap into, depending on the car. You may have to tap into like a DRL or a turn signal. That depends on the vehicle. So, you know, you ask about the complexity of a harness. Those are questions that you should ask. And, you know, ideally you get somebody that knows your car very well. And it doesn't mean that if you have a preferred builder or somebody that you've worked with in the past and you liked their work, even if they've never done the car before, chances are that they would probably do a pretty good job. And honestly, it's a safer bet than going with somebody that you don't know. But if this is your first time purchasing a set of lights, it's always a good idea to try to ask other people to see who other people are using, who they recommend. Ask them their experience, ask them how the harness was, ask them the questions that I'm laying out here. How was this? How was that? Many times people will basically buy one set of retrofits. They've never had any others to compare to. They don't really know how this person is versus that person. They've been with one person, one time, and they're basing their entire experience on that one experience. It might be a good experience. It might be a bad experience. They may not really even know. Maybe they thought it was a great experience, but the reality is it should have been a lot better. So, you know, it does a little bit depend. It is nice when it is somebody that knows the vehicle and the platform. I personally do not touch German cars. There's just too much of a learning curve there and too much room for issues and errors. There's a lot of builders out there that have tons of experience with the German cars and the intricacies of everything inside of them and wires and things and feedback, and just it's a laundry list of possible issues. And of the German cars that I've done, it seems like it's completely random which ones have what, and that's why personally I don't mess with them. But there's a lot of builders that actually have a lot of experience with them. They know exactly what to do, and they don't have any issues because they know the little tricks that you have to do for those German vehicles. So finding somebody that is familiar with your car, especially if it's like a German car or something that's a little bit more finicky, is a great idea. If you have something that's an older car, 10 years or older, and not German, then you're probably safe with just about any builder, because most of those cars are not generally too complex. So, wiring in for turn signals, things like that. You can have a basic hyper flash resistor, which is something like this. They do come in different forms. These usually get pretty hot. There's some that don't get as hot, but that would be about the extent of things that you have to do to make the car work properly. Usually there's not a heck of a lot more than that, so it's not extremely complex, because most cars that old, non-German, are pretty basic when it comes to that wiring. So ask around, compare what other people are saying, try to get as much information as you can. Don't just take somebody's word for it. If everybody's dropping a name, find out, have you ever had retrofits from somebody else? How was your retrofit installed? Did you have a lot of extra wiring? Was everything labeled? Things like that go a long way to try and help you if you're doing the install. If you're not very familiar with wiring, it's generally a good idea to get somebody that is. If you're not comfortable replacing a battery on your car, you should not be installing a set of retrofits. It's, know your limitations based on what you're looking at doing, and, plan accordingly. I think most of us probably know somebody that can install a basic head unit in a car or something like that. If you can install a head unit in a car, you're probably going to be good with the average retrofit. They're not too complicated, but definitely need to know your limitations for that aspect of it. So this is something else that we do on ours, and that is, if you're using color flow LEDs, they draw power all the time. If they are plugged in, they draw power. So you get a lot of issues down the road if you get some really nice build and you don't drive your car every day. You're going to end up having dead batteries. And that's even if you're not running the lights, because they draw power all the time. What we have is a power saver module, which we incorporate into our Ghost box. That's why this box is a little bit bigger. We actually have a power saver module in the bottom half here. And it's an automated module, so basically it turns on and off with the car. You do have a remote function that will allow it to turn on and off manually in the event that you want it to play without the car on. But for normal function, normal driving up and down the road, it's automatic. It will connect when the car starts and do your turn signals, your DRLs, and all that stuff, and it will disconnect when the car shuts off. Now, something like this can be incorporated into any addressable. That's if you use a Ghost, if you're using an SP controller or something like that. SP is the kind of controller that some of the cheaper builders will use, and that's something you do want to ask as well. The Blue Ghost, if you've seen some of our other videos, is by far the most car-oriented controller out there. It gives you the most control, it gives you the most features and changes on the fly of any controller that's out there. And it does cost more. So a lot of builders, to save, $100 and some will opt out of the Ghost controller for something like an SP controller. And, the SP controllers come in very different shapes and sizes. Here's one I just happen to have here. There's a ton of different ones. This one's the SP611E. There's the SP105, SP110. In any case, they always start with SP. So you got SP controllers, and there are many of them. And then you've got the Blue Ghost. We actually have a version of the SP controller that has a driver with turn signal inputs and DRL inputs that go in front of it. It is not on the level of a Ghost, but it is more car-oriented, car-centric than a standard SP controller. So that would be one question to ask. If you are looking at getting something with the addressable, the color flow LEDs, is do your controllers have inputs for turn signals and DRLs? And specifically, you're asking, do the color flow LEDs themselves act as the turn signals and the DRLs? It's very common for people who are building lights where they will maintain all the factory lighting, and then they'll put a strip inside the lights for show modes. The biggest drawback to this is that almost every single time that somebody does that, they have to put the LED strips in a way aiming at a direction where they're not easily visible, because they still have the factory strips, which the factory strips are aligned to output the light the best of any option. So if you have somebody that is retaining the factory LEDs for the DRLs, for the turn signals, for things like that, chances are your output is not going to be great. So that is a drawback, and that's something where the Ghost is very nice. And once again, you may have a car where they have to kind of do that kind of thing. It's possible. Some cars do. But, you know, do your research and try to find out. Ask around, see who's got what. And to the best of your ability, try to figure out what is what. I wish I could cover every car here and just tell you, well, these cars do this, this car does that. But there's so many options out there. It's really difficult. Your best bet is to find the builders that are using the good parts, the quality stuff. That means that they're not afraid to do some work. They're not afraid to spend some money to put out a quality product. And that goes a long way. So beyond that, back to the Ghost controller. The Ghost is what we use, and we do use the power saver on the bottom, and that's something you're going to want to consider because dead batteries are no fun. So harness simplicity. How many wires are you going to have? Are they waterproof? Do you have the connections to the battery? Do you have fuses on the connections to the battery? These are some of the questions that you're going to want to ask, and I know this is a lot. There's a lot to ask. There's a lot to know. Hopefully this gives you guys enough information that it will at least help you to be a little bit more knowledgeable in the event that you are looking at getting a retrofit set built or you're looking for a builder. But that is our harness in a nutshell of the way that we do it. And, you know, there are different ways that people do it, but some of the things that you're going to look out for, and installing this is not going to be too difficult. So definitely keep that in mind. Next up, we're moving on to the lights themselves. So this is a Hyundai Veloster that I just happened to be working on this week. So I figured I would use it in the video. So some questions. Do you use new lights? Do you use old lights? Do I need to send my lights in? Things like that are all factors. Something I would highly recommend for most people. If buying a brand new set of lights is only, you know, $300 or less, and you're spending over $1,000 on your custom set of lights, don't use used lights. Just go brand new. In general, especially if it's like more than 5 years old or so, your lights are probably not nearly as clean as you think they are. Like sitting on your car and you walk up to them, you look at them, you probably think, oh, those look great. But as soon as you get all that work done on the inside, you will see just how bad those lights are. Used lights, not a great idea, especially if you're spending money to make them fancy on the inside. You know, just go ahead and spend a little bit extra, get the new stuff. I generally will not work with used lights if brand new lights are less than $300. I've had a few exceptions, and it's usually if it's like brand new lights, if it's expensive lights, or if it's lights that you literally just can't find. Those are the few exceptions that I've done. But generally, if I don't feel comfortable, like I almost feel like, you know, I'm cheating somebody, I'm not going to do it. Building you a set of lights for $1,000 and not using brand new lights that would cost $200 is cheating you. I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do that to a builder or to a end user, to somebody, you know, you're putting it on your car, a customer, anybody like that. I'm not going to do that to you. And I personally wouldn't let another builder do that to you. But that's up to you. That's definitely preference. There are some builders that'll build you a set of lights for $300, you know, so it's a little bit different ballpark. If you're going to pay $300 for a build and they're trying to get you to use, you know, old lights, yeah, I can understand a little bit more. You're not putting quite as much into it. New lights would cost the same amount as having the lights built. So I get that. Definitely consider the cost. And I would highly encourage you to consider the idea of going with new lights. Another benefit to the new lights is that you can get them coated. A lot of guys do like to go with the 2K clear coats, and those are good, especially if they are applied properly, they're applied well. I personally ceramic coat everything. I've had really good luck with ceramic coating. I've been doing it for a couple years now, and so far I'm not seeing stuff fade. The ceramic coat that I use is an Adams 10H ceramic coating, and it is rated for 7 years of UV protection. So it does really well, it looks really good, it cleans really well, and it has a pretty good level of scratch resistance. Between the two, my own personal lights, I ceramic coat them. I'm not going to say that it's better than clear coat. because obviously if you know a true professional were to lay down the clear coat, and they do a very good job of it, I think you probably could have better results. Ceramic coating is harder to mess up. It's super easy to install, super easy to put on the lights. A PPF is another really good option. I've worked on a couple lights that had the PPF on it, and it's definitely a pretty resilient material. It can take some scratches and some hits and things, and it holds well. So that is a good direction to go to. So I would say any of those three are good. Nothing is bad. So if you get brand new lights, even if the builder doesn't want to do it, you should consider ceramic coating yourself. I do have a video in our tutorial section about how to ceramic coat and basic concepts. It's super easy. There's not much to it, and the best time to do it is when the lights are new. So definitely consider some kind of a protection on the lights. It's worth asking your builder, do you put any kind of protection on the lights, and to get an idea, are they doing something like that? And if they're not, once again, shouldn't be a deal breaker, but it should be something so that you know to do it yourself. You should most definitely have some kind of a protection on the brand new lights that you just got, because in a matter of 2 to 3 years, they can go yellow on you. So definitely a good idea. That's another factor too. So I hear all the time people say, oh, we got to go OEM, got to go OEM. They're the only lights that are any good. Well, that's not always true. And it does depend on the car. It does depend on the circumstance. Once again, all this stuff is kind of just generalized information. There are cases where OEM is significantly better than the aftermarket stuff, but most aftermarket stuff is literally designed after the OEM. They take the OEM lights, they take them apart, they mold everything, and they churn out replicas of the OEM stuff. The biggest drawback that I see time and time again is that protection on the covers themselves. It seems like most of the time OEM lasts longer for the actual covers, and a simple protection, some kind of a UV protection, whether it be a PPF, a ceramic coating, or a 2K clear coat, will greatly increase the life of those lights versus completely, stock eBay set. So definitely consider that. Don't get so hung up on OEM versus aftermarket. Some of the biggest names in the industry use aftermarket, OEM, massive, things like that, and they don't seem to have any issues. So definitely don't get too caught up on OEM versus regular, and the reason I'm saying that OEM is generally about 3 times as much money, sometimes more. So unless you really, really want to spend a ton of money on the lights, I don't. All of my cars have aftermarket lights on them, and I just apply the clear coat, and I do perfectly fine. I don't have any issues. So something else to consider. Something else to ask about, and anybody that's been around cars, especially retrofits, anything like that, has heard of the term condensation or leaking. So condensation and leaking are 2 different things. Leaking is where water is actually getting into your lights. That means the lights were not sealed properly, or there's a gap somewhere, a hole somewhere, something's not covered up. Water is physically getting in your lights. Generally, a leaking light, if you were to pull it off the car, you will see standing water in the bottom of the light. That is a leaking light. Condensation, on the other hand, is when the lenses will fog up, and moisture in general is in the air. So in the event that it is a really humid day, it's a hot day, and you hit your car with a hose, condensation is likely to happen. Now, to what scale, it depends. The absolute worst case scenario, and I get a lot of customers that will actually send me pictures right after they did this. It's inevitable. Car washes. If you've got your car outside, it's a hot day, it's a warm day, and you hit the car with cold water, it is going to condensate. It's pretty normal. It is just the fact that the inside of the light has to regulate itself to the outside temperature, and when you hit cold water on a hot light, you get condensation. So there are ways to kind of combat condensation, and those are things that I would ask, like, what is your builder doing to prevent condensation? The answers that you want to hear would be breather patch patches, breather vents. They are adding breathers to the lights. If they say in general I don't have any issues or I don't really worry about it, it's not a great sign. It definitely depends on the light. I'm sure some people, some brands, some model cars don't have nearly as much condensation as others. But in general, as a builder myself, I put breather patches on every light. And it's just to try to prevent the concerns of condensation. If I could set lights up to where every time you washed your car you didn't get a drop of condensation, I would. That's not quite reasonable, but at the same point, I don't want you coming out in the morning getting ready to go to work and it's covered in condensation. I want to try to do everything in my power to try to stop that, and I believe that most builders do. But it's definitely a question you should ask, because some don't. Some don't quite understand condensation and how it works, so they may not do the things to try to protect against that condensation. So that's something to ask for. In the case of this light, I actually have breather patches here, and there's one right here, and I got another one right up here somewhere. It's under the side. And I got 3 in the bottom. So I've got 6 breather patches on this light, and they are spread across the light, and that will help to greatly cut down on any condensation that might happen inside of this light. Sometimes you need more, sometimes you can get away with less, but not doing any is not a great sign. Breather patches are super cheap. They're not hard to install at all when the lights are open. And if you install them when the lights are closed, you're probably going to get pieces of plastic and thing inside the light. You might hit something important that's inside the light because you can't really see where you're drilling for the holes. So it's ideal to put them on when the lights are being created. So unlike the ceramic coating, it's not quite as simple to add it yourself after the fact. This is something you're going to want the builder to do. And I would ask the builder, do they do anything to prevent condensation? And hope that they give you the right answer, which would be some kind of a breather patch, breather vents, something like that. We add breathers. That's the basic idea. Another thing that a lot of builders will do is condensate packs. Basically like the little moisture packs that you see inside of packaging that you get for electronics and things like that. They'll add a few of them inside the lights. That's also a good option. I don't do it as much because I found that if properly applied breather patches, generally you don't need the condensation packs inside. But it's not a bad thing to put them in. So it just kind of depends on the builder and I guess how well they've kind of figured out the condensation factor. Another reason I don't like to use condensation packs is that if they absorb enough moisture, let's say the light is actually leaking, then they tend to want to tear and break open, and then you get a bunch of plastic balls all over the inside of the lights, and eventually that'll work its way to the front and on every corner and all over the place. It makes a mess. It's another reason I don't use them. I don't really generally need them, and I don't want to have to deal with the potential that they would break open. But if a builder says that that's one of the things that they do, I wouldn't be discouraged by that. It's not a bad sign. They are at least doing things to try to prevent condensation. So they're going that extra mile. That's a lot of what you're looking here for, is a lot of the questions that you're going to ask. Are they going that extra mile? Are they trying to do a little bit more to help you as the customer not have issues? And issues can happen to anybody, so don't get discouraged if your builder had issues. How well is he addressing the issues? How well is that builder ready to work with you to get the issues fixed? Are they learning from the mistakes? Are they trying to do things differently? These are the key signs that you're looking for. I've heard of builders that completely ghost customers, and those are the ones that I'm trying to help you to avoid. The ones that are just there to collect a check, send you a set of crappy lights, and then disappear off the globe. Nobody wants to deal with that, and hopefully these questions that I'm laying out will help you avoid those problems. I'm going to go over the basic terminology, and that way when you're asking the questions, you know what is what are the names of different things, and hopefully to make it a little bit more easy for you to know, what the builder is actually offering you. So we'll start out with the most basic thing. Your demon eye is the part inside of this lens right here. So the actual projector lens is right there. The demon eye will go inside of that. Now, not every light has projectors. You know, it kind of depends on the light. Generally, with a retrofit, that's what you're doing, is you're adding projectors. But some people, they're doing something different. Maybe they're just keeping reflectors. But in the event that you do have a projector, which is that glass bulb right there in the middle, that will be your demon eye in the back. So generally you can have RGB, you can have single color. This one here is a color flow one. I've got it set to a set color for that, but it happens to be a color flow one as well. And you know, brands, what are they using? I personally have had really bad luck with Profile. I don't use them anymore. There are some cheaper ones on eBay. We sell some that are pretty good. Lighting Trends sells some. You know, demon eyes, they're for the most part, honestly, the majority of the ones that I've used have done pretty well. Profile's pretty much the one exception. I've had nothing but nightmares out of Profile. Dynamics sells some that are really good. So for the demon eyes, you know, you can ask what kind of brands they're using, but in general, most of them are pretty good. So don't have to be too worried about the demon eyes. Next up would be your halo. Now that is the ring that is around the projector itself. So around that demon eye, the projector, you have that halo. Now sometimes they're called angel eyes, sometimes they're called halos. They can be different shapes. Many of you are probably familiar with Circuit Demon, who has created many different unique shapes. We have created several shapes ourselves. So you have the hexes, gears, hearts, angry eyes, 3/4, demon halos, stars, tons and tons of different designs and shapes, and there are new ones coming out all the time. They're all still considered halos, and the main idea is generally that they're going to go in front of that projector. Now you can get creative in where they put them and how they use them, but that's the general layout of those halos. And halos can come as a switchback, which would be a simple white for your DRL and flashing amber for your turn signals. No color flow, no RGB, none of that stuff, just white and amber. That's the most basic. There are some single color halos as well. I guess that would be more basic, but that's not quite as common unless that's something you're literally looking for. Next up would be your RGB. So most of the stuff that, like, I'll use Circuit Demon as an example again. Everything that they sell Halo-wise is RGB. So it means it can be any color that you want it to be. They do have a turn signal function worked in. And they do have the ability with certain controllers to have a DRL. Now we sell a RGB lineup that has a wire for your DRL, a wire for your turn signal, and they can also be any color as well. So there are some different ones out there. Not saying, you know, you need to go with one over another. Oracle sells a bunch. The RGB halos, the switchback halos, you know, there's a ton of different options for them. I like the ones that we sell, I think are pretty good for switchback and RGB. Profile actually does pretty good with their switchbacks. I haven't had too many issues with those. Diode Dynamics makes some great switchback halos. I haven't had any issues with those. I believe Oracle Lighting Trends also sells switchback. I believe, I could be wrong on Lighting Trends. I'm sure they're probably pretty good. So for the most part, the switchbacks aren't too bad. RGB, there's only a few companies that sell them. Profile does, Diode Dynamics does not. And then you've got the Oracle, and you've got things like Flash Tech, things like Lighting Trends. I believe Lighting Trends sells RGB stuff. I can't remember if they sell just straight RGB or not, but I think they do. And then obviously we have our lineup as well, diffused or not. So the idea of a diffused is, you can see the halo there. The LEDs, it's white. So the halo itself is white. There are LEDs behind that white ring. Now there are different kinds of diffusion. You can have the style like ours, which is a gel coating that actually, let me get one. So this is the way that we sell most of our halos, and that is with the gel coating over top. And you can see it's quite a shiny coating. If you look really close, you can see the LEDs. It is hard to see them, but part of that is to make them still be bright, but look good. You see it's from a side profile there. They're generally not massive in size. It's another benefit to them. And there are some out there, like Lighting Trends does this. They actually have a ring, plastic ring that can go over top of their bare LED style. So their halos would look more like this, and you would get a plastic ring for the diffusers, and that goes over top. Now generally that is much thicker. So if you look at the side profile, it will sit quite a bit off of the LEDs versus the gel coating style. You know, I think that's kind of preference as to what you prefer over another, but you may ask your builder, you know, what kind of halos they're using, how do they look, do they have any pictures of them possibly. Generally, if you look at their profiles or their Instagram accounts or things like that, and you can see some of the things that they're using to determine is that the direction that you want to go or not. But the gel coating is something that I prefer myself, just because it does look much more clean. This is the way that Profile does their halos. This is the way that Dynamics does theirs. It's the way that we do ours. And I'm sure there are other companies out there as well doing the gel coating versus the plastic acrylic diffusers that go over top. As mentioned, this is the style with the bare LEDs, so many people will actually build with bare LED style halos like this, and that is where, when it is off, you can clearly see all of the LEDs. Some people prefer this style, some don't. So, you know, there's not a right or wrong on that. It's just knowing what is what, knowing the terminology, and knowing what it is that you're looking for. So if you want that bare LED style, that's the way to go. If you're looking for the diffuse style, you kind of know the difference. You know what you're looking for. You know the variations of diffused and just the idea of what these are. And even these sometimes can have a gel coating over top, but it will be like clear. So you still see the LEDs, but maybe it's like done that way to be waterproof. We have some ourselves just like that, that are designed to be waterproof, but still have the bare LEDs like that. So next up would be your LED strips. Now, LED strips can come in many different forms, and it depends on the style of the lights, but that's generally what they're going to use to replace whatever the DRL would be. So in this case, the light actually has a main DRL that wraps around the light, and that usually you're going to have, as a builder, you're going to replace that with something different, something brighter, something, in the case of color flow, something addressable. And that's what gives you that look that we have going here, where the RGB is flowing. It's got that color flow look to it. And that's something that I'll cover a little bit more in detail here in a couple minutes. But that's something that you're going to want to ask questions about. How are they running it? How are they using it? Are they, once again, are they utilizing the factory strips, or are they replacing them? Replacement is generally better if they're using good quality strips. The strips that we use are on par with most OEM lighting. And it does depend on the light. There are some cases where that's not the case. But by and large, it's generally better to replace the OEM stuff with the addressable stuff, because it gives you more control. I mean, you're ordering custom lights, you want to have customization. And you're not going to get customization if you're utilizing the factory strips. So definitely a question to ask. Next up, terminology-wise, you do have this part here. Now, this is a custom acrylic panel that we've installed. Now, there's many different formats that these can come in, gills, different shapes, and things like that. This one here just says dress-up bolts for the customer that's getting these lights. And it can vary a lot. Now, that is backlit with LEDs, strips in this case. And it can vary by build, but just terminology-wise, that would be an acrylic plate, and sometimes it can be referred to as gills if it's just lines on a plate or something like that. So terminology-wise, that's what that is. For the actual lens here, you can see the pattern that's on the lens. That is called an etching, so lens etching, and that's something that you're going to want to ask. Can they do it? How much is it? Do you even want it? Maybe you don't. It does affect output slightly. It is by and large insignificant, the amount that it affects output. It's not much, but it does affect it. So if you're looking for the maximum output, absolute best possible just go no etch and you will get better output. But it is insignificant. I etch all the lenses on my cars to make them a little bit unique, because I prefer the design over the minuscule amount of extra output that you'll get without etching. But it does make a difference, so please consider. Generally, that is an upcharge as well, so something to consider. Not every builder does it in-house, and everyone that does is going to charge money either way. So that's generally an upcharge to get the etching. We do the etching on almost every one of the builds that we do. Just kind of throw it in part of the package price, but something to consider. Then down along the bottom here, now these are just little 5mm LEDs, but how well do they incorporate the whole light? This is kind of a good example of that. So a lot of builders, if they had a light like this, they're going to replace they'll probably add a halo, they'll probably do the demon eye, they'll probably replace the strip that goes in the little wraparound DRL here. They might do the acrylic. That's usually a little bit more of a advanced thing for some of the more basic builders. And then you move in down here. This is the thing that I think most builders kind of avoid, or if they do it kind of poorly. They'll probably use like little pods, which are just little round puck chips that can go in there, and they work, but they're not like super impressive, super amazing. So, it kind of depends. I mean, once again, I'm not trying to say that it has to be done with 5mm like we did with these little 5mm LEDs, but it does go a long way. If you're trying to go the full mile, you're trying to get the best you can get, you're comparing one builder to another. If you've got one that's in a case like this, they're using 5mm LEDs for these little single holes down here in the bottom with the reflectors. You're going to be happier in the long run than somebody that's using just simple LED strips or pods behind there, versus somebody that doesn't do anything down there, So it's understanding what you're getting, understanding what questions you should be asking. So once again, this is not, I'm not in any way saying that this is the way that all lights should be built. I'm just trying to point out the different aspects of this light so that you understand the terminology and what you should be asking for, so that you can get the light in the end that you're actually looking for. One thing I will point out on this one, now this is a little bit unique. I don't think most builders are doing this, but we did actually put dress-up bolts inside of the light. So in case you were seeing those, wondering what those are actually bolts from dress-up bolts that we put in, incorporated into the light. A little bit different, a little bit left wing, a little bit out in left field, but thought it was really cool on this set, so we did it. Hey, if you like it, you can talk to your builder, and I'm sure they'd be willing to try to incorporate that in there too. So next up, I want to talk LEDs themselves. Now, not all color flow is built the same, straight up, and there are a lot of companies that do what they can to try to save money, and that's not really something you want when you're spending over, $1,000 or more on a set of lights. You want to try to find the companies that are using quality products, and this is literally why Next Level Neo exists. Bragging Lights is my main business. That is the main structure. It's what it's used to be, is retrofitting. I was a retrofitter. I still retrofit. If you want a set of lights like some of the stuff that you've been seeing in this video, you can definitely hit me up, and I can get you a price and quote and time frame and all that stuff. But out of necessity for better parts, Next Level Neo was created. And we started to develop parts. We started to pay manufacturers and engineers to design things that are just better. This is what I was using back before. As you can see, now this is a 90 LED per meter count. So I try to simplify this as much as I can. There's different types of LEDs that are color flow. There's SK chipsets, WS chipsets, UCS chipsets, TM chipsets, tons of different chipsets. There's different LED types, as in RGBW versus RGB. And then there is LED count. So the LED count is how many LEDs are there on a strip per meter. So this would be a 90 count per meter. It just happens to be something I still had from back when I used to be using them. This one is made by a company called BTF. You can actually find them on Amazon, eBay. They're really cheap, easy to get a hold of, and that's why a lot of people still use them. Their reliability is so-so. It's not horrible. It's not great. It's somewhere in between there. But the biggest drawback, they were just never that bright. And yeah, reliability wasn't as good as they probably should be. So we moved away from that, started developing our own stuff. This here, so this one actually, the LED chipset is known as SK6812, and this is the RGBW variant of that. This one here is also SK6812. This is also the RGBW variant. The difference is that we have developed these with a brighter output. And that can be done with different resistor packs and things like that. We also put it on a thicker PCB so it can absorb more heat, which allows the LED to get brighter. Generally with LEDs, as they get hot, they get dimmer. So heat dissipation is very important, and that is one of the reasons why many of the times if you watch my other videos, you will see a lot about rigid strips. Rigid strips do much better with heat dissipation than what a flexible strip will. So this one here is a lot easier to install. Builders like them because of just the simplicity of it. It's flexible. You can put it in place is really easy. It's low work to be able to put these in place versus what these are. You know, they're flexible. They're semi-rigid. You're somewhat limited in where you can put them, but they're brighter. The end result is just better. And that's why, for me, I use these on my own cars. I use these on the cars that I build for people. If I have to choose between the two, I'm going with these. I'm not even going to use the BTF. That stuff, I had a roll sitting there for years and figured I'd pull it out for this video. So definitely a question that you want to ask. You know, where are they getting their LEDs? What are they getting in brands? The best advice I can give you, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, if they're buying their products from Next Level Neo, that is a good sign. If they're not, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it's not good quality. But, you know, where are they getting them from? Is it good? Is it not? It varies a lot. It varies a lot because there's even some companies that have really good stuff and really bad stuff. So I could drop a name right here of some kind of company and say these guys are pretty good, but it's hit or miss on a lot of them and what they sell. So I pride myself in trying to have nothing but the best. And if it's not the best, I generally don't push it or I don't even sell it. Next up is your UCS. Now this is a different type of chipset. This is my go-to. This is what I like to build with. So hopefully the camera's kind of picking up the differences here in brightness. But the UCS is the stuff that you're going to see on your car in the daylight. Sunny out, hard to see anything. Even on an OEM car, sometimes it can be a little difficult to see the DRLs or the turn signals if the sun is hitting right on the front of the car. This is the kind of stuff that's going to get you as close to visible as possible. And most of the time, it's fully visible. There's not a heck of a lot of times where I can't see this stuff. But definitely the way that I go on my own builds. And we have different variants here. I do have our 120 LED per meter variant here, and I have our 144 LED per meter variant. And that's what this one is here. This is a 144 variant, and this is a 90 variant. Unfortunately, I don't have any 144 variants of this strip in-house that I could demo for you guys. But this is just kind of an example of the LED types, and that is a question that you're going to want to ask. What type of LED types are you using? In the event that it is a set of headlights, you do not want a builder that is using RGB. RGB does not have a dedicated white diode. So the way that RGB LEDs are is they have a diode for each color. RGB meaning red, green, and blue. And they have a diode that lights up those colors, and they use a combination of red, green, and blue to create whatever color you want. In the event that it is a white color that you're trying to create, it will turn red, green, and blue on full power to try to create that color. The problem is generally you have a bluish hue to it with RGB. There are some companies that have gotten really close to a white. Glow Industries actually has done pretty good with that, but it still does not compare to a true RGBW setup. Case in point. So these are the whites. Now this one is a natural white. Happened to just be the only thing I have in. So in BTF's defense, they do have a better color white available if you get the cool white. But we use a cool white, and it is, as you can see, a clean, good-looking white. And that's just not something you're going to get with an RGB. RGB is going to have a slight bluish hue to it, and that's something you want to consider. Another drawback to RGB is that it creates a lot more heat. So the more diodes that are on, the more heat that is created, and having that extra heat is generally going to create more issues for these strips themselves. Maybe they fail, maybe they draw more power, maybe they overheat and they get dimmer because of the extra heat that they're drawing. So those are definitely things to consider if you're going to be going with headlights, as you're going to want that RGBW. If you're doing taillights, white is not nearly as common. You know, for headlights, your DRLs are generally white, and they're generally on 90% of the time you're driving down the road. So you want to consider that white being pretty important part of that strip and the way that it's structured. Whereas if you're doing taillights, it would literally only go on for reverse. Other than that, unless you're in the show modes and you're doing a white show mode, you're really not going to use the white much. So if you do really like the white, if you're going with kind of like a white LED theme or something on the car, then you may want to go with the RGBW in the tails, but RGB is perfectly fine in taillights generally. Now for us in particular, we actually have a RGB strip that is extremely bright, and we use it for all taillights, and that is so that brakes can be seen, everything can be seen extremely well. Bright sun does not matter. You're going to see your brake lights, you're going to see all that on your car with those strips that we sell. So we have all that stuff on the site, Next Level Neo, and once again, anybody that's on our authorized dealer list on the site has access to those parts, and at minimum should be familiar with those parts. Now, are they necessarily using them? Are they not? That is something you're going to have to ask your builder. What are you using? And once again, not to toot my own horn, but a safe bet is to ask, are you using all Next Level Neo products? I know what it is. I know what they're using if they are, and in general, I can recommend it. I can say it's a safe bet. That does not mean that there are not other good quality products out there. Totally are. Definitely are. So it's kind of a hit or miss, but those are kind of some of the questions you're going to want to ask. You know, what are you using? What is your LED count? What are things like that? You know, a 90 count is just not going to be bright. A 144 version of a BTF is brighter than this 90 count. It's still not going to be as bright as this rigid strip where the heat is much easier dissipated. We also have, once again, a better resistor pack combo that makes these just slightly brighter as well than what they would be with the same resistor pack combo that you would get with the BTF or some other brand of addressable stripping. This has primarily been more for indoor lighting, is what BTF has been known for. But a lot of people have pulled them into the cars and been using them in that way. But definitely prefer the more solid, rigid strips with the better heat dissipation, brighter LEDs, and just in general, just better results. Very happy with them. They cost more. I've tried to explain that to people a lot. It's not the same as the other stuff, and that's why it costs more. It's built better, and that's something that I pride myself in. My builds will get my products almost exclusively. There are some things that I don't carry, and I do have to go to other companies to get them. But by and large, if I can't make it with my own products, I'll probably create a product so I can. And that's how a lot of this stuff comes about to be, is creating things so that I can use my own stuff in my lights that I build. So hopefully that explains that aspect of it. So that is the basics. I'm sure I missed a lot, and I know this video is already way longer than it probably ideally should be, but there is so much to cover when it comes to retrofitting. One thing I didn't cover is what kind of projectors are they using, HID, LED, stock. Those are questions you're going to want to ask. LED projectors generally put out much better than what a stock projector will. HID projectors do well, but they create a ton of heat. If you're going to use addressable like this, color flow LEDs, they don't stand up well to extreme heats. Even our stuff, if you got HIDs inside your lights, it's going to cook them, and you're more likely to start having issues months, years down the line. If you have LED projectors, they put out less heat, and they generally put out just as good of output. So to me, I only use LED projectors, my own cars included, and that is to prevent any issues from the LEDs, but also to cut down on the clutter and a lot of the things that come with HID setups. So that's something you're going to want to ask for. I like to put it this way. Think of a car brand new right now that you can buy off a showroom floor with HIDs in them. I don't know of one. Modern cars have bi-LED projectors. That's just the way everything's going. Top-of-the-line cars like BMWs has laser, which is just LEDs on steroids. They just got LEDs with lenses that super focus the light in one direction, but it's still LED projectors. Most modern cars are either halogen for the base models or bi-LED. I don't know of any brand new cars that are using HIDs. HID is just kind of dated. It's kind of unnecessary. It is bright. It is good. But it's a lot of heat. Heat that can melt things. Heat that can distort the plastic covers on your lights. Heat that can create a lot of issues. The bulbs on HIDs, if your ballasts, if your grounds aren't right, if everything's not set up right, the bulbs tend to like to go out. Different drawbacks to it, and once again, I'm not trashing HID. I'm not trying to say don't go HID, they're the worst in the world. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying in general, for me personally, I go bi-LED, and that's the way that I go. And please note, there is a difference between bi-LED and drop-in LEDs. So if you're talking about like the bulbs that you can get, the LED bulbs that you can get aftermarket to plug into your factory lights, that is not the same thing. Those are really bad output. If you're buying from a builder or if you're considering building yourself, I would stay away from those. Halogen actually do pretty darn well comparatively, and it does depend. Some LEDs, drop-in LEDs are on par or slightly better than halogen, but it's really a hit or miss with LED bulbs. So I prefer the bi-LED projectors. HIDs do have great output, but with the cost of the heat and the complexity of the system, there's a lot more wiring and units and things that you have to factor in with it. If you're building a set of lights for an older car that came with HIDs, maybe you just want to stick with the HIDs. I get that. Keep in mind, though, addressable does not do well with that extra heat, so you're going to want to factor that in. I do not build addressable builds with HIDs, so for me personally, I don't do it. And the reason being, I want my stuff to last. If I build you a set of lights, I don't want you to have problems with it. I don't want you to have to send it back to get anything fixed. I want you to just be able to rock your lights and enjoy them. Stuff does happen, but I do what I can to eliminate those issues, and one of those things is that I do not build with HIDs. Just the reliability is not quite there. So that is one thing that you definitely want to ask, is what kind of main headlight bulbs are they using? What is your low beam? What is your high beam? Are they LED? Are they bi-LED? Are they HID? Are they stock halogen? What are you getting? And obviously there is a cost factor in that, in what you're getting. So when you're comparing prices between one builder or another, you definitely want to consider what they're using inside of the lights. Something else I'll touch on real quick is shrouds. Now, if you have an older car that has a reflector style and you don't actually have a projector, that's when you're actually going to get an older definition of what retrofit. Retrofit is putting a projector in a light that doesn't generally have a projector. And These are the covers for that projector, so they would go directly over top of the projector, and they are called shrouds. Now, there are many different styles of shrouds. There are not really any like horrible brands. At least I've never come across any. There might be some, but by and large, you know, everybody's using the same kind of shrouds. But you know, there's different kinds, so you want to know the terminology. These are called shrouds. This is a full turbine. This is a mini turbine. There's Panameras. There's just tons of different names, and I'm dropping names that were kind of, they're more specific to the retrofit source, so they've kind of become the standard definition everybody calls them. But you know, they might come in different names depending on what they, what company that you actually get them from, or your builder gets them from, but there's generalized names for them for the most part. So those would be your shrouds, and obviously you got, you know, black, chrome, paint them, whatever you're looking for, different paint schemes, hydro dip. Once again, this video could go for days, but there's just so many different options, so many different things. Hopefully I got a lot of the terminology out of the way. Hopefully I was able to break down a lot of the things that you want to ask about and you're looking for. And hopefully I have somewhat simplified this somewhat complicated aspect of retrofitting. What it is, what you're looking for, what you're getting, and what to watch out for. But I do appreciate you guys watching the video. If you made it this far, thumbs up. You did a great job. Because I know I covered a heck of a lot. But hopefully it did help you guys in the long run. Once again, definitely check out the website and our dealer list. Better chances doing that you get a builder that's using good stuff, that's building good lights. Nothing's guaranteed, and there are plenty of builders not on our list that build quality products. So take that with a grain of salt, but if I was looking, that's the way that I would go about trying to find a builder. So thanks for watching the video, guys. If you have questions, you know, reach out to me. I'll try to do the best I can to answer any. If you're looking at a builder and they're, you know, telling you some different things, I can try and help guide you in that direction. If you're looking for a certain car, I do know a lot of the builders that are using my stuff, and I do know a lot of the cars that they're building. So, you know, I do actually have guys that'll hit me up for a certain car, and I'll be like, well, actually, you should go to this guy because he really knows what he's doing. So, you know, depending on the circumstance, if you reach out, I can definitely try my best to point you in the right direction and help within reason. But, you know, helping you guys get the best that you can, helping the industry to put out the best that they can is a lot of my goal and where I'm trying to be at right now. So, definitely here to try to help you guys out. Any questions you have, reach out. nextlevelneo.com. Check our builder list. See if there's somebody in your area or somebody that you want to try to check out and have build you a set of lights. And by all means, reach out to Bragging Lights, and we can discuss options on building as well. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, all that jazz, and I'll catch you on the next one.